Right now at 4, a guilty plea from this woman in a St. Charles County murder. Thanks for joining us. I'm Courtney Bryant in for Claire Kellett. In the past hour, the St. Charles County Prosecutor confirmed Pamela Hupp has pleaded guilty. But there is a twist in this bizarre murder plot. News 4 Investigates' Lauren Traeger has been tracking this case for years. She joins us now with this afternoon's developments. Lauren.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, guys. That press conference wrapped up just a few minutes ago. The prosecutor explaining that they waived the death penalty, meaning that Pamela Hupp will now spend the rest of her life in prison. But in exchange, in a bit of a legal twist here, she didn't actually have to acknowledge her guilt in this case. So a little bit of background for you here now. Hupp was accused of luring 33-year-old Louis Gumpenberger to her home in an attempt to frame someone else for a separate murder that occurred in Lincoln County back in 2011. Now, Hupp had claimed that Gumpenberger was an intruder, and she said that the shooting death was actually self-defense. But prosecutors said that Gumpenberger had a traumatic brain injury and really could not have pulled off such a crime. In fact, they say the evidence really started to mount against Hupp, that she, in fact, hatched this whole plot herself. For example, today we got to see a copy of a note. This was the first time we'd actually seen this note that was found in Gumpenberger's pocket. Now, according to an expert for the prosecution who was prepared to testify at trial, that note, which seemed to have instructions for how to kidnap Hupp, was actually written by Hupp herself, likely. Another very key piece of evidence here that the prosecutor talked about was the initial 911 call. So Pamela Hupp was actually on the phone with 911 when she shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger. She said it was, again, an intruder and that this was self-defense. But the prosecutor said from listening to that 911 call right away, he knew something just didn't quite add up and didn't sound right. So we want you to take a listen to it for yourself.
911, what's your emergency? Hey, hello, there's someone breaking in my house. Help! What's the address you're at? Help!
Want me to give you want me to give your wife?
No, I'm not getting in the car with you. No,
What is the address?
Get out, get out, get out. Help!
What's the address you're at?
Help! Help!
Why is somebody breaking in?
No!
Hello?
Help! Help!
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Now, the prosecutor said they actually cut off that 911 tape just 1 second before 5 shots could be heard. Those were the fatal shots that killed Louis Gumpenberger. They also laid out other pieces of evidence that they said really showed and proved that Hupp herself was guilty of this murder. Take a listen to what the prosecutor had to say at this press conference.
We don't ask for the death penalty unless we believe the person deserves it. As I stand here today, I tell you, I believe she deserves to be put to death. But I'll also tell you this, there's a lot of factors that go into that. First of all, and I think of significant importance, I should say, is that the victim's family is very supportive of us waiving the death penalty. Their preference was that she serve the rest of her life behind bars.
So what happened here today is actually called an Alford plea, which means that Pam Hupp did in fact plead guilty, but she did not say that she was guilty of the crime. She just had to acknowledge that the state had enough evidence that could have proven her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Kind of a technical, sort of legal, complex issue there. But the prosecutor said, again, he was able to accept that plea because the victim's family was okay with it. She will now spend the rest of her life behind bars. And also because it was kind of a practical matter. This could have been a very lengthy trial. It was not even scheduled yet, and this is a crime that's 3 years old. They were going to have to bring jurors in from all the way across the state, and the prosecutor said it really would have cost the taxpayers about $300,000 in order to take this case all the way to trial. So that was one of the reasons that he wanted to say this is the best outcome. Now, Pamela Hupp is going to be sentenced at a later date coming up in August, but the only available sentence to her now is life in prison without the possibility of parole. She's 60 years old, so she will spend the rest of her life in prison. Some people, though, a little bit disappointed that she didn't have to acknowledge her guilt, especially because her name is still tied to 2 other deaths. And we'll talk about that just a little bit here. That one is that 2011 Lincoln County murder that we discussed a little bit earlier ago. That's one that's still ongoing and something that could come up up again. Another, there's been some coverage that we've done and some speculation about her own mother's death in 2013. So there's been some stories on that, a little bit suspicious in terms of what actually happened with her mother's death. So this may not actually be the last time we hear the name Pamela Hupp. Live in St. Charles County, Lauren Traeger, News 4.
All right, thank you, Lauren. We are working to get reaction right now from all of the families who have become involved in this case. Stay tuned for News 4 at 5 and 6. We also have a full look back at the twists and turns of the case right now on KMOV.com and through the KMOV News app.